Greetings, family. This is Dr. Kia Pruitt. It is Tuesday, December the 6th, 2022, and the time is 1:01 p.m. Welcome back and happy Tuesday. I'm so excited to be back. I've been gone for 2 weeks and we'll discuss why later. But today I have an amazing guest. He's a recurring guest on our show and a good friend of mine. This today is Andy Schectman, the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals Company. Now, as you all know, Miles Franklin is the most trusted, most respected company in the precious metals industry. They've been in business for over 33 years. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and have not had one complaint. Many of you have ordered from Andy Schectman and his company and have said that you've had a wonderful experience. So without any further ado, let's welcome Andy back to the show. And Andy, you're free to talk about whatever is on your mind and what's been going on in the precious metals industry.
I appreciate that, Kia. Your introductions are always so fantastic. Thanks for having me and your kind words. And it's good to be back. I hope you had a nice holiday and looking forward to catching up.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So what's you want me to jump right in, or did you have some questions you wanted to ask me?
You know, we kind of discussed this offline. I think it was a couple of days ago about Ghana and how Ghana made this amazing announcement. I meant to turn off my phone, but you know, while we discussed that, before we discussed that, I want to tell you I lived in Ghana in 2014.
Oh, wow.
Yes, in the villages, one of the villages. And we traveled to several villages and we noticed that there was a lot of gold mining going on. So I knew something was up, but I didn't know what. You saw the Chinese there, you saw European nations there, the Lebanese were there, and I just couldn't figure out what was going on, but I did know that Ghana was called the Gold Coast for a reason. So can you explain to us what that announcement was and what the implications are of that announcement?
Right. So a lot of the developing and emerging nations like Ghana have been really affected by the strong dollar because their debt is denominated in dollars and the oil that they purchase is denominated in dollars. And what happens is with the dollar being so strong, they have to sell more of their local currency to buy dollars to service their debt, to buy oil. And it's put a real crimp on a lot of countries, a real strain, and it's growing strain as the strength of the dollar has increased, and the massive amount of debt that most of the world has incurred over the last several years. And so this is a tough thing, being that almost all of it is denominated in dollars. So what Ghana's government has proposed was a new policy to buy oil products with gold rather than US dollar reserves. And they're talking about mandating that the domestic sellers or producers rather of gold would have to sell, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% of their production to the government, so that the government would be able to then stockpile it to use it to purchase oil and other items to trade with. And I think it will be a trend that you will see this type of trend growing, not just in countries like Ghana, but all around the world. And ultimately, if I had to guess, we'll transition into a gold-backed digital BRICS currency where everyone is just moving away from the dollar. And Ghana is just another example of it. These pieces that are being put into place before the switch is flipped. And I think that'll revolve around the BRICS nations and all of the countries joining that group to challenge the Western hegemony, to challenge the dollar. And this is just another microcosm of all of these things that have been happening over the last couple of years.
And I also noticed that it's not just Ghana that's made a wonderful announcement like this, but there were other countries, well, a dozen countries that have stated that they are interested in joining BRICS. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Russian finance minister came out just the other day and announced that over a dozen countries have intentions of or already have applied for BRICS. You have Algeria, Argentina, and Iran have already applied. And then the other countries, one that was a surprise, was not really a surprise, but I think it's a endorsement, is the United Arab Emirates, who just earlier had joined the BRICS banks. And if you look at the bill that the two senators had brought down to the House floor to pull the Patriot missile system from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates for not increasing oil production into the midterm, but in fact decreasing it, calling it an open act of aggression. You know, these senators are idiots. They don't realize what makes the dollar the world reserve currency, and that is the protection of Saudi Arabia and the OPEC countries go along with this and value oil in dollars. And so when you see them talk about issuing NOPEC, which is how do I even say it? It would be a bill that would ultimately strip the antitrust exemption from OPEC and be able to go and prosecute them for certain transgressions. Not only that, but to remove the Patriot missile system, when the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia has come out publicly and said that China is their biggest oil interest, not only this year, but for the next 50 years, and that the United States' main purpose is military protection. We're talking about stripping military protection, and they named the United Arab Emirates. So to see the United Arab Emirates as country number one on the list of 12 that want to join the BRICS nations, it's eye-opening, and it follows this continual narrative and linear progression of events that I've been talking about since 2020, and it's accelerating. Other countries mentioned, the second one is Nicaragua. Well, that one was a little bit of a surprise to me. You will see more countries in Central and South America join this parade. I'll get to that in a moment. Turkey is another. Turkey, typically a Western ally, has purchased more gold over the first 7 months of 2022 than any country on the planet. And when we talk about, excuse me, the new BRICS currency, as clarified by the Russian finance minister, that it will be pegged to commodities, and in particular gold being the only other tier one reserve asset in the world, it becomes illuminating, shall we say, that Turkey more than anyone in the world for the first 7 months of 2022. Other countries, Indonesia, Senegal, Nigeria. What's interesting about Nigeria, if we go back to 2021, when Saudi Arabia and Russia signed a joint military cooperation agreement the day we left Afghanistan, I said that day publicly, and since, in all the podcasts I've done, that was the day we lost the petrol reserve status. The day after that, Nigeria signed on with Russia as well, being protected by the Russians, as well as they are now intending on joining BRICS. So you have South Africa, where, you know, they're part of the African continent, obviously, but South Africa, Russia, China, Brazil, India. You're talking countries that have nuclear weapons. You're talking countries that are coalescing against the West. And so you pick a fight with a country like Nigeria. In essence, you are picking a fight not only with Russia, who has signed an agreement with them, China, who is buying Nigerian oil for the Petro Yuan bond and has accepted their application into the BRICS. You are picking a fight with a whole bigger set of players than just the little old state or country of Nigeria, rather. So it's a big deal, a very big deal. Afghanistan, you see a thread here. Countries that not only have significance, but you'll notice as we talk, countries that we've had problems with, like Iran, like Afghanistan. And so they are coalescing against the Western hypocrisy and hegemony. The rallying cry, if you will, is let's get away from these bullies in the West and let's all join together and create a new reality, because it's been centuries that these countries have been under the thumb of the West. So Afghanistan, next on the list. Egypt, a traditional Western ally. Kazakhstan, and of course, Saudi Arabia. Those are the 12. But one of the things that I don't know that we've talked about at all, Kia, is the BRICS plus nations. Have we talked about that at all?
No, I don't
Okay,
think.
so the BRICS plus nations are next on the list.
Okay.
And they're very public about this. The reason they have chosen the nations in the order that they have, most of which have already agreed to and or signed on, is because these are some of the larger nations, some of the more influential nations. Now they will choose countries in the backyards, if you will, of many of the countries that have already signed on or are in the process of, because those countries that have already signed on have considerable influence in their own backyard. Let me give you an example. We know that Brazil is one of the main players of BRICS, right? Well, Argentina is next on the list in their backyard in Latin America. We talked about Central America and Nicaragua as well. They're on the list. And when we talk about South Africa, we have Saudi Arabia. That's a big one. We know that they signed on. The United Arab Emirates, Algeria, Egypt, Iran, Senegal. These are all countries, and you can see here, there's some real significance to some of these countries. Iran, who we have issues with, Egypt, who has been an ally traditionally, Saudi Arabia, the linchpin of the whole system, and the list goes on and on. And that would be in South Africa. In Central Asia, Central Asia, you have Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, and Russia. In Southeast Asia, you have India, Indonesia, and Thailand. These are all countries that are all going to be invited and likely to influence other regional BRICS countries in due course. Now, if you research this a little bit more, you'll see more and more and more, which I'll talk about here in 1 second. And many of these other nations have already signed on to the Belt and Road Initiative and have increasingly close ties with China and Russia, whether it be through the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or the Belt Road Initiative. Remember when we talked about the BRI, the Belt Road Initiative, we documented that all 13 OPEC producing countries are on the Belt Road Initiative, right? So this is a very big deal, very big. This is the Western hegemony, the Western petrol reserve status at heart. So they talk about additional future potential candidates would be expected to include in Central America, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Panama. In Latin America, Bolivia, Chile, Cuba, Ecuador, Peru, Uruguay, Venezuela. In the Caucasus regions, Azerbaijan. In Central Asia, Mongolia, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. And in Southeast Asia or South Asia, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. Now, one of the things that I found most interesting about researching and doing the real big deep dive into this stuff. So we've talked about how gold was a tier 1 reserve asset, was reclassified by the Bank of International Settlements in 2019. The only other tier 1 reserve asset other than US dollars. We've talked about how these countries like Turkey have been massively accumulating gold. We've talked about the Russian finance minister saying that the new BRICS currency that they intend to issue as a reserve currency will be pegged to commodities. We have talked about all of these countries, the RICS in BRICS, Russia, China, India, South Africa, are the massive producers and accumulators of gold and silver. So when you realize that the countries that I were mentioning, many of which have already expressed interest or will be, listen to the gold holdings as a percentage of their reserves. In Venezuela, it's 82%. In Uzbekistan, it's 65%. In Kazakhstan, it's 63%. In Bolivia, it's 55%. In Belarus, 40%. Turkey, 29%. It wasn't 29% before the beginning of the year, but they are massively accumulating it. Pakistan, Kyrgyzstan, 29% and 22% respectively. So then we can talk about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is another piece of this puzzle, which include Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Russia, Takistan, Uzbekistan. They're all full members. Afghanistan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Belarus, Cambodia, Kuwait, Maldives, Mongolia, Myanmar, Nepal, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, Turkey, Turkmenistan, and Qatar are all in various status as SCO dialogue partners and or observers. So do you see what's happening here? All of these countries are joining together. And it's not just the 12, it goes way, way, way deeper than that. And there is a plan to bring all of these countries on board to ultimately, I think, encompass, in terms of a coalition, close to 85% of human population. And that presents a formidable challenge for the West, who I'm sure in their best interest will go down kicking and screaming. But nonetheless, certainly it is something that it bears paying very, very close attention to.
With all of these countries having high gold holdings, and you often hear about revaluation of currencies. I wonder if gold will be revalued. Now that gold is a tier 1 asset, all these countries have gold. Can we surmise that gold will be revalued?
Yeah, I do believe that it will be revalued.
Okay.
Most of the world holds gold on their balance sheet at 35, most of Europe anyway, at $35 an ounce, and it's never been revalued. In fact, it's held in an account called the gold revaluation account. And they're not allowed to offset that gold against any liabilities on their balance sheet. And it was interesting, about 2 weeks ago, he was a very high up ranking official with the Dutch National Bank, maybe the governor of the Dutch National Bank, basically came out and said that, look, all of the countries that have become very indebted over the last several years have been buying, quantitatively easing. They have been buying treasury bonds that they issue. And as rates have been rising, those bonds are taking on more and more water. They're underwater. It's a big deal. They are really very indebted. And when you talk about, in an instance of even buying long-term debt, that like mortgages or treasuries, in the case of the U.S. at low rates back then, when they were buying them 2.5%, now being confronted with short-term obligations of much higher rates, it's a bad combination. And so a lot of these balance sheets are underwater. And what he was saying is, look, the gold revaluation account that all of these countries have in the US, I don't remember why the US is valued at $42.22 an ounce. I'm not sure why it's not $35 the way the rest of the world is, because at the end of World War II, when the dollar was backed by gold to the other countries, they could all redeem dollars for gold at a fixed rate of $35 an ounce, and they never changed it. I don't remember, it's been so long, I've forgotten more than I remember. I've been doing this for so long, that ours is valued at $42.22. There was a reason for that. But suffice it to say, it's all held in what's called a gold revaluation account, and it cannot be offset against liabilities. And so when you value it at $42 or $35 versus what it really is at almost 18, obviously, if they were just to revalue it to those levels, it would considerably help their balance sheet. But what the governor basically said is, you put it up to a more significant level, 5,000, 10,000, it will immediately make healthy all of the world's balance sheets. And if you see all of the countries that are accumulating gold, it's almost like they've all been clued into this, because gold was revalued tier 1. All the central banks started to repatriate their gold from the New York Fed and the Bank of England. I've talked at length about that for years. And now you're seeing all of these countries accumulate massive amounts of it to give them equal footing in what might be a new system that the elite already know about that we don't. How do you make it work? You jack the price of gold way up, call it 10,000 bucks, peg it to a new system. And this is not unconventional. I mean, this guy right here did that. That's President Roosevelt. He confiscated these coins and these certificates at $20 an ounce. He paid everyone like $20.65 an ounth. So they got a premium. And then he devalued the dollar by 40% and put gold at $35. So bang, their treasury was just increased by 40% based upon the revaluation of gold or the devaluation of the dollar. And I think countries will do that. I think it could be maybe even a global phenomenon where the central banks revalue gold to make their balance sheets whole. In other words, if it's on your balance sheet at 35 or 42, in the case of the US, you have 8,300 metric tons, and you put it at 10,000 an ounce, the fact that we're 30 trillion in debt on the balance sheet, you jack that up to 10,000 an ounce on 8,300 metric tons, and bang, all of a sudden all of your debt's paid off, or at least you have debt and equity on equal footing. And this is something that I think you will see. I do believe that it's too uncanny, not only to have it held in a gold revaluation account, that's the name of it on the balance sheet of the central banks, but also that they're all copiously accumulating it. And the most since 1975, they're just loading up on gold. And it just makes sense to me that will be the pathway to getting to where they need to be, because inflation isn't going to work, nor is austerity. So making the hard decisions. So instead, just jack up the price of gold in your balance sheet is made healthy quickly.
Yeah, and I've often heard you say that where gold goes, silver will follow. So we always talk about gold, but silver seems to be just as important because, as you've said before, gold is the money of banks, I believe you said, but silver is the money of the people.
Yeah, well, and look, I mean, it's also the money of the banks too. I mean, if you look at, in some cases, India is expected to import as much as 300 million ounces this year. Wow. They're importing 30, 40 million ounces a month. And which is interesting because there's only 34 million ounces of silver in the registered category on COMEX. They're going to import almost 10 times as much as there is backing the price setting mechanism of the West. So I think the world is, and the central banks are starting to show their hand that they're putting a much greater significance or emphasis on the value of commodities. Zoltan Pozsar, the former New York Fed employee, he's the repo market guru, said we are entering a period of time called Bretton Woods 3, a system dominated by commodities rather than by debt instruments. And you can see using price as a tool of misdirection by suppressing the levered paper price, the biggest money in the world is accumulating the crap out of it, whether it be central banks or commercial banks or sovereign wealth funds or family offices. The exodus off of the exchanges is startling.
Let's talk a little bit about price suppression, because when I first got into precious metals, I think silver was like $14 an ounce. Then it went up to 17, and then I saw a fluctuation. I think it got as high as almost $30 an ounce a couple years ago. But I continue to see the price of silver and gold both fluctuate. The last time you were here, we saw that you were here on the show, you had mentioned that both silver and gold had increased by 3%. So why do we see this fluctuation? What's the point of all this? Why are they suppressing the prices? And why do we see this fluctuation? Because for people like me who are kind of relatively new in this game, we don't understand that when we hear that gold and silver are very valuable and precious.
Well, and when I use the word gold, you can interpret it as gold and silver. It's just easier for me to visualize everything in the concept of gold. It is the kryptonite to the US dollar and the Western system. It is the antithesis of what central bankers do by creating money out of thin air. And the fractional reserve system and the ability to keystroke money into existence. It's unethical. It's immoral. You should have to do something to earn money to give it value. And what gold is proof of work. It's proof of it took work to get the gold out of the ground into a refined product. But it used to be under something in economics called Gibson's paradox, which is the inverse relationship between real interest rates and gold. And if you suppress interest rates, then gold should become very, very attractive. The theory behind it loosely is that because gold doesn't pay any interest, if you have high interest rates, people will buy treasuries with safety and a yield. If you have non-existence interest rates, why then gold and silver should really take off because there's no opportunity cost. And that was the way it used to be. That's what kept people in the Western system and enabled the fiat system to create money and to enslave half of humanity in debt. Well, it's changed from that, and I think it's changed because there was a time when everyone just wanted U.S. based assets, commodity, securities, real estate, bonds, and so that's not the case anymore. And I think they've gone from a period of suppressing the price of gold and silver to keep everyone happy buying US treasuries and US assets and Western assets into suppressing the price so that they can massively drain the shelves of all the physical supply. And this is globally. So you have big money holding down the paper price with leverage, while at the same time accumulating the physical. They're doing that because most people never look past they don't open up the hood and look underneath. They don't look past the price. And so if you can make the price volatile and keep it suppressed under moving averages, volatility and low performance makes no one want to buy it. At the same time, if price and this volatility was any indication of value and demand, then who the hell is draining the world's supply? Why is it the lowest supply in the history of the London Metals Exchange for silver since they started keeping inventory records? Why is it that over 75% of all the silver on the COMEX market that is available for delivery has been delivered over the past 18 months, whereby another way of saying that is the registered stockpile has been bled down by over almost 75% from 135 million ounces down to 34 million. So it's disappearing. And who's buying it all? Where in one day, one investor can pull 26 million ounces of gold off the COMEX, or 45% of all the kilo bars back in the COMEX mini contract, or 5% of all the 100 ounce gold bars. Who's got this kind of money? And if value was an indication of price, things would be very different than they are, or demand rather was indicative of price. I mean, what you're seeing is the shelves being bled dry through misdirection, through suppression of price. It's the no look pass in basketball. They're suppressing the price, enabling them to drain the world's commodity complex literally to the bone. And then when there's no longer a bid price, then they'll let it go because no one will sell it at these absurd prices. Or when, like, for example, the Russians are talking about issuing on behalf of the Eurasian continent a new exchange in Moscow that will, as they even came out publicly and said, challenge the manipulation of the COMEX and the London Metals Exchange. All they would need to do is day one, peg gold to $3,000 an ounce and silver to $50 an ounce, and bang, everything would arbitrage eastward. All of it would go that way to collect that huge premium, and the COMEX and the London Metals Exchange would be broken and obsolete forever. And I think that's on the horizon too. That's part of the playbook for the BRICS.
Wow. So suppressing the price enables them to buy gold and silver en masse. And so what does that mean for us? Because when I talk to people about investing, I don't know if investment is the right word, but rolling over their money or the fiat dollars and their IRAs into precious metals, they ask me, what is the benefit for them to do that? I say because as the USD lowers in value, then precious metals increase in value. But what is another answer for why they should invest in precious metals?
Because precious metals, gold and silver, first of all, aren't even investment to me. They're wealth. They're wealth that have outlived 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, every pandemic, and are still immutable. They are wealth that are being accumulated by the most well-funded, well-informed, influential, sophisticated traders on the globe who are draining, literally draining the supply of all of the gold and silver. And they are misdirecting us with rhetoric and price. The sophisticated money is always 3-4 steps ahead of the public. The public is looking, it's like I talk about skiing. It's one of my favorite things to do. I don't know if you've ever gone skiing, Kia, but when you ski, they teach you to never look at the tips of your skis, look 5 feet out. It's like when you drive a car, you don't look at the emblem on the hood, you look 20, 30, 40, 50 yards in front of you. The same thing with skiing. If you look at your tips, you'll cross them. So you focus your energy down past the tips of your skis so that you can navigate what's coming in front of you instead of keeping your face right here and bang, you run into the tree because you're looking at your tips. So the point of it is that the big money is using the misdirection of price and of rhetoric to accumulate and make everyone who is well read and smart, just not reading maybe the right stuff, or not listening to the right commentators, doesn't decrease their intellect. You know, there's a million things that people are smart with or understand. Not everyone spends the time to understand what's going on here, but the bottom line is this: the biggest money in the world is using that to accumulate and to reposition out of the dollar.
Yes.
And when the central banks are on the biggest buying spree that they've been on, literally in 50 years of gold and silver, that should tell you something. When in the third quarter of this last year, over 400 tons were delivered out of the country, sent out of the country to country, and Bloomberg and Reuters surmises it's Russia, Saudi Arabia, China, and India buying it. Well, where have we heard those names before? Oh, yeah, the BRICS. So they came out, 400 tons were sold. That's double the biggest third quarter ever. 700 tons already, over 700 tons for the year. That's bigger than any year since 1967. That's leaving the United States, so off of our exchanges. So the biggest money in the world is using this price to reposition. And either you stick with your recency bias and conventional wisdom, or you trust your gut, you being the people you're talking to.
Yes.
And you protect yourself the way that the big money, the smart money, the sophisticated money is moving. And, you know, when I own gold and silver, Kia, I hope to God I never need to use it. If I do, damn glad I have it. And it's not just for an emergency. Maybe it's an opportunity, a real good one when the dust settles, real estate or equities or whatever. If not, I give it to my kids. And like I said, there are very few things that have stood the test of time. And where we're going, Kia, in terms of counterparty risk, there are very few things that are not also simultaneously someone else's liability. Think of all the cryptos held on FTX. People lost billions of dollars, right? Bankrupt, insolvent, gone. How about BlackRock and Blackstone? Two of the very largest real estate investment trusts in the world. BlackRock, it owns how much of the US property? What did they just do the other day? Suspended all redemptions because too many people have redeemed. Too many people aren't paying their mortgages as rates are rising. There's defaults. And now people who largely are invested in those funds are pension funds. So I told the pension, sorry, you can't redeem anything. So imagine you're 30 years older than you are right now, and you're ready to go sit on a beach. And you invested in US real estate through BlackRock, the biggest company, the biggest hedge fund, safe as hell. Real estate in the US, it couldn't be better. And what did they just tell us? No redemption, sorry. Counterparty risk. Gold and silver are assets that are not simultaneously anyone else's liability. And that's something to think about at the same time. So not everything boils down to what you can see and quantify right now. Some of it has to be from a historical perspective, another of it has to be we're in uncharted waters, floating aimlessly, and you have to trust your gut. You have to trust your gut. And the reason so few people succeed in investing is because they follow the herd. It's safer, it's easier. But I would submit that you take accountability for everything else you do in your life from the moment you're able to speak. You know, you pull your little brother's hair, you get in trouble. You know, you drink and drive, God forbid. Hopefully the worst thing that happens is, you know, you get a DWI. You cheat on your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, bad things happen. So why is it that all of these things that we are accountable for, everything we do, we're accountable for, yet maybe the most important thing in the world, protecting our assets, we defer that responsibility to financial advisors. And I'm not going to cast a wide net on financial advisors. That's not fair. But I will say many of them know more and more about less and less till they know everything about nothing. They are singularly mindset focused into the road to retirement is paved only with mutual funds and stock certificates. So I guess I would say unconventional times, Kia, call for unconventional thought and action. And looking at gold and silver as an investment is not the right way. Look at it as wealth. And I think it becomes easier to understand why to own it.
And a final question I have for you is about, you mentioned protecting your assets. People have asked me to ask you, would it be wise for them to take their money out of the banks? Because historically, banks have gotten in trouble when there was an issue with the USD losing value, and we had bank bailouts. Well, now there is some discussion about bank bail-ins, where the bank may take your money and protect themselves. So how do I answer that question? Should they take, I mean, I'm not a financial advisor, but I just don't know how I should approach that question.
Well, calling it some discussion, I don't think does it justice. In 2008, after the great financial crisis, the banks in 2009 wrote into law bail-in legislation. So when we as taxpayers had to bail out the banks, it became illegal. They said, we can't do that anymore. It's not the responsibility of the taxpayers. But what will happen is that we will enact bail-in legislation, which is in essence bankruptcy law. So if you have money in a bank over the FDIC limit, I don't know what limit they'll choose. I think in Cyprus, when they did this, it was 100,000. But let's just say you have over FDIC, let's say you have $500,000 in the bank, and the FDIC limit, which is a scam in and of itself, they're woefully underfunded. But let's just say they say anyone with over 250 in the bank, that money goes into a pool to bail in the bank, to bail in their poor investment choices, basically. And then once the bank is made whole or solvent, everyone gets the proceeds and then divvied back out on a pro rata basis. So it's law, it's real. And you have to ask yourself, is the return you're getting in the bank commensurate with the risk that you face in a very systemic world where contagion can happen very quickly? We haven't seen the end of what this FTX deal is all about. We haven't seen the fallout. It's just beginning. But I would submit that as one institution or one bank goes, or I mean, don't forget about the pension funds and the insurance companies, and they're all intertwined. And the systemic nature of everything right now. Yeah, I mean, having your money in the bank comes with risk. It's not as riskless as one would believe, as we have all been led to believe. And at the same time, it's interesting, most people don't know this one, but at the same time they did that, they implemented something called money market gating. And that's because many of the money markets were invested with Lehman Brothers when Lehman went under. And so everyone tried to pull out. And that's what's called, when the money market goes upside down, it's called breaking the buck, where you don't even get your money back in a money market. And so the government imposed money market gating legislation. So think you're safe in a money market, you're not in the bank account, and you get gated and everything starts to go to hell, and you're gated and you can't leave. It's kind of like the Hotel California. You know, you can come, but you can't leave. And I don't know when they would ultimately move the gating legislation or enable people to leave. But in essence, this is exactly what's happening right now with BlackRock. You're gated, you can't leave. You could have a few weeks ago, but you can't anymore. Sorry, I got something in my eye. You can't anymore. And that's what gating is. And it's a very awful feeling, because you think you did something right. You think you did something conventional. You think you were safe and your retirement or your liquidity was good. And no, it's really not. You're stuck. Go sit back down. We'll let you know when you can come back. And that's one of the other things that I think people should be concerned of. Look, I would ask this question. I like to look from instead of looking at that as a problem, I'd like to look at it from the other angle, and as if it was implemented, why? What is the ultimate reason why? And I don't think they implement money market gating and bank bail-ins. I don't think you see the Social Security Administration buy, millions and millions of rounds of 223 ammunition and AR-15s, and the same thing with the IRS. And these things were done because they see trouble ahead, whether it be the whole system blowing up and insurrection, where food stamps and entitlements aren't working any longer, where, I mean, God only knows how bad it gets when the whole system blows up.
Okay.
But you have to ask yourself, why did you do it to begin with? Why does Social Security need AR-15s and 223 ammunition? And the same thing with the IRS. Why are they implementing bail-ins and really no one knows about it and making bailouts illegal if they don't expect maybe that to happen, or money market gating? And I don't think you just make these rules up very covertly. Really, most people don't even know it exists. It should have been front and center on 60 Minutes and on the evening news nationwide for days in every newspaper, but it wasn't. Why? So yeah, these are real threats, real thoughts. More reason to own gold as wealth. Be your own insurance company, your own pension fund, be your own bank. And here again, unconventional times call for vastly unconventional thought, in my opinion.
Listening to you speak, I keep going back to biblical references, and you sound like a prophet. You sound like Noah saying, listen, there's a flood coming. You sound like Jonah. You sound like all these prophets in the Bible who have historically warned the people. This is what you need to do because catastrophe is coming. So I thank you for that, Andy. And I thank
people have told me that.
Yeah.
And my wife laughs at it, and it's kind of heavy, actually. I've been doing this for a long time, and we've had a good run as a company, and I don't need to put myself out there to the public the way that I do. But honestly, I feel like I need to. It's the weirdest thing. I can't quite explain it. And you know what's more strange than anything, Kia? I mean, there are times in people's lives where they see things and they don't act on it, and they're like, I knew it, damn it, I knew it. And there are other times when they think things and it never happens. I've been victim to both. What's very interesting to me is that I have been publicly talking about this. You can validate everything I've been saying since 2018, really almost 2017, when the German Bundesbanks repatriated their gold, and then the Bank of Austria, Hungary, Turkey, Poland, the Dutch National Bank, the Czech National Bank, they all started. I'm like, well, what's going on here? The banks have been selling their gold for the past 6 years. We're in the middle of a bear market. And from that day forward, this progression of events I have documented on thousands of YouTubes. People can go back and see. It's a very heavy experience. So when you say that, I don't know if I am, maybe you go way back my lineage all the way through biblical times as prophet. I don't know.
Yes.
I'm just a normal guy who sees things and is standing out on a limb, taking a little bit of heat from people who don't agree, in the mainstream, saying this is where I think we're going. And the scariest part about it all, a guy who's got 3 kids, youngest being 15, is it's happening. Yeah, exactly the way I said it was going to happen, and it's actually accelerating. Wow. And never in my wildest dreams, when I said in September 2021, the day we left Afghanistan, that when Russia signed this deal with Saudi Arabia and then Nigeria for joint military cooperation, that's what we've been doing for the past 50 years. Never in my dreams would I have thought we would have seen as many things happen as fast as we did, including the admission of a new reserve currency pegged to commodities, including the massive acquisition of gold, and including the expansion of the BRICS into the BRICS Plus, and then the second group, which is encompassing all of the majority of humanity. And the people in the West are asleep. And I wish they weren't, because as someone who's owned a metals company for 33 years, I was 19 when I started. Wow. Most people don't want to hear any of this because it's not like being a financial advisor where it's about your people's motivation being greed.
Yes.
My motivation is fear. Now, I don't try to scare anyone, nor do financial advisors prey on people's greed. What I'm saying is, as human beings, we are motivated internally by greed, making money, and fear, not losing. And my message is nowhere near as fun on a party, at a cocktail party, to talk about the sky falling. It's more fun to talk about stock, Facebook stock that just made Joe Smith over there, a gazillion dollars. You should do it too. Well, that's an easier conversation than it is, you better protect your ass because the sky's falling. And so anyways, I don't even know where I'm going with this other than to say I appreciate the compliment. And I wish, being, in your words, a prophet, was a little bit more lighthearted. Unfortunately, it's not right now. And I think people need to, either get on the ark or end up swimming to shore. And I don't know how far off the shore is when this whole thing breaks.
The prophets always bring the warning, but he's a blessing. He or she is a blessing to the people who listen. And so I thank you for using your calling, using what's in your bloodline. It's a part of you to give the message so that we can be prepared, because when you're prepared, then you will have the provision and protection of the Most High, or of God. I believe in God. So having said that, Andy, I would like to know, how can people protect their assets? Where do they go in order to acquire gold and silver or any precious metals?
Yeah, we're doing a soft launch for our website this week.
Okay.
Internally, the website will be released very soon, which is milesfranklin.com. Our existing website is fine for information, but is woefully lacking in terms of purchasing and current inventory. And so the inventory on that website is not right. So send us an email at info@milesfranklin. Say Dr. Kia Pruitt sent me in the subject line. We will return an email back, answer any questions you have, put you in contact with a broker if you would like to be, and send you an up-to-date price list so that you can get your questions answered, make a purchase if you wish, and talk with someone if you wish. And we'll make sure that coming from you, that they get extra special treatment. So soon we'll have the website where they'll be able to you'll have your own affiliate page. But in the meantime, info@milesfranklin. Dr. Kia Pruitt sent me. Any questions? If you'd like to be contacted, put a number and say, please contact me. If you just want prices, that works too, or information on IRAs or any of the information that we've talked about, we're happy to help.
I honestly like the personal touch that you have with sending an email, because I am a customer and one of your brokers feels like my friend. I call him, what's going on? How many, what type of specials do we have? I always say we, because I'm an affiliate. What type of specials do we have going on this week? And make sure you let me know. And then he always takes my order, and we talk on the phone, we email back and forth. So I appreciate that, Andy, because relationships.
Yeah, I think where we're going, I agree, Kia. I think where we're going, relationships is real important.
Yes.
And, they're important anyway. It's, as a father of 3 kids who, I grew up, as did you, when, we went outside and played. We weren't on phones, cell phones, computers, iPads, and watching this generation, they're great, they're smart, they're intuitive, and they have ingenuity, but arguably what they lack is interpersonal communication skills. And I think there's a lot to be said for having a relationship, and you may not realize how important that is until there's a problem. So developing those relationships, friendships even, is a good thing. And it's a good thing whether you're talking your best friend or a business associate, someone whom you're trusting with information, with money. You should have a relationship. And I personally agree with you. I think it's indispensable. When our website is up, we will be a hybrid model. We will never give up our one-on-one type of relationship-based business. But for those people who want to purchase online, they will have that ability. And it will be a mitigated ability. We're not going to allow it for anything they want, but in terms of dollar value, but there will be the ability to buy online, to see prices, and a little bit more transparent in things that we're doing.
That sounds great. What about storage, Andy? Do you help customers with storage of precious metals?
Yeah, we have one of the best storage programs, maybe the finest in the industry. I think we're the envy of the storage industry with
Right.
BRICS. We have worldwide exclusives with a fixed rate, with safe deposit boxes that no one else has, with a vaulting relationship in Miami that no one else has. So we have some exclusives with BRICS that we're very proud of. But our facilities are in Montreal, Canada, Toronto, and Vancouver, all in Canada. And then in the States, Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, New York City, and Miami. And we have some really cool products. So if people want to talk about vaulting metal they currently have, or making a purchase and vaulting it, either way, we're certainly happy to answer those questions.
Andy, as always, I enjoyed you. You're a wealth of knowledge. You're a prophet. You're a friend. You're the greatest entrepreneur I know of, and all of your staff members are either family members or people you've known since high school. You have an A+ rating. I just feel so honored, honestly, to know you.
Well, likewise. There are very few people I've ever met that have the aura that you do, and you can see it. I don't know if people understand what I mean, but I look at you and I see just light and aura and goodness everywhere. So it's nice to be associated with you too, Kia. I appreciate it. I'll look forward to picking back up where we left off. Maybe we can do one more here before the end of the year, and then of course, if there's something that requires us jumping on to give an update, I'm always for that too. I'm gonna try and take a little bit of time off as we get towards Christmas, towards the end of the year, that last 10 days or so, but I'll be plugging away until then and look forward to picking up where we left off.
And are you still doing the podcast on Twitter?
We are, yes. Okay. It's not every single week, but we will, and we'd like to invite you on too, and have you come on. And when you're there, you should come up. I'll put you as a moderator or a speaker, and invite your friends and family and your listeners. And yes, so the answer is yes. And
when is that?
A lot of this will be expanding into the first of the year with our new podcast we're going to do, our new website. We're going to roll out a lot of things, and we'd love to have you be part of it.
Thank you so much. So family, I just want to thank you for coming here today to listen to our friend Andy Schectman of Miles Franklin Precious Metals Company. I hope that Andy and I'm going to start calling him a prophet, the prophet of the Most High. I hope the information that we've shared have served to raise your vibrations and encourage you to manifest the most magnificent, amazing life that you so wonderfully desire and deserve. Thank you again, family. Peace. I love you. Bye, Andy. I'll talk to you soon. I'll send you this. Bye-bye.